are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Trust and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about everything related to estate planning and probate and trust administration, both from the standpoint of your own financial affairs and also for professionals like my guest and me who help people deal with this area of our lives. So today I am beyond excited to have my guest, and I believe me, I'm going to blow her name at some point during this show. But my guest is Dana Garnett, and Dana is well at the moment she is in London, England. It's always a treat when I have a guest who's not in the colonies, as the British might say, and she's actually getting toward the end of her days. It's 6 p.m. In the UK right now. But Dana, I can't thank you enough for taking this time and being with us here on Trust and Estates Weekly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm excited as well to be here. And yes, it's going on 6 p.m. here. As we were just chatting, it's 1800 hours in the UK. Given both our international, your military and international relationship, right, with time.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So Dana, and we were talking about this before we went live. If you would, so our topic for today is resolving impossible conflict, and the fact of the matter is, both in the estate planning and in the administration phase of settling an estate, it is so frequent for conflict to arise. And in fact, I was talking to an attorney friend of mine last week he's been doing estate planning and now he's expanding into administration as well. And he was saying he just is surprised by how often conflict arises in spite of there being a good estate plan. So before we get into your topic though, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into this space of resolving conflict, especially very deep conflict?
Absolutely. Can appreciate the question. Well, I've been a mediator, a credentialed mediator, if you will, for the state of Texas for the last 10 years now. And I tell people I'm actually on purpose not an attorney, and I'm on purpose not a therapist. However, both are very important and have their roles. And people that come to me and say, "Oh, I don't want to get an attorney," I'll tell them you need legal advice. If you're involved in serious conflict, right? Particularly if it's a breakup, a marriage breakup, a business breakup, an issue within a trust, what have you. So you need that legal advice to make sound legal and financial decisions for your future without regret. The therapy side, sometimes people need a therapist to dive into childhood experiences or specific relationship issues that mediators traditionally we don't go that direction. As a mediator, we're guiding a process to help people come to their own conclusions about things. And in the mediator space, I tend to have, when I'm mediating court order cases, for example, I have maybe 4, 8, 12 hours with people I've never met, and I may never see them again. And so the skill set is very focused to get to the heart of things quickly and try to help them settle things. I will say that a challenge I have found with mediation over the last 10 years is that oftentimes you get to a settlement agreement, but settlement isn't real resolution. And sadly, as mediators, we'll see people that we know how to maybe help them with some communication skills, right? And to help prevent things blowing up down the road after they leave mediation. Unfortunately, mediation does not set things up for that. It's not a training ground for other people, for the parties, right? And it tends to also come very late in the process of conflict resolution, especially in the legal terms. So what I just started doing is several years ago is working with people to help coach them, if you will, through conflict situations. Maybe they're going into mediation, they're dealing with a trust situation, they're in a business situation. Turned out a lot of people kept coming to me. I worked with the family business advisor for a while, and he was sending me some clients when he was on a second book tour. And people would say, I'm the only one that sees there's a problem. No one gets this but me. Nobody wants to come to the table and work this out. And the beautiful news is you don't need everybody around the table to resolve even serious, complex generational conflict. It might take two or more to tango, but it only takes one person to shift the dynamics of the situation, because when people are fighting and one person learns a new way, there's not much else to hit up against for the other people. So what starts to happen is the situation starts to shift and neutralize. And by knowing how to show up differently, it will eventually create a dialogue that other people may not even know you've gotten help with some conflict resolution skills. But you can, in fact, shift those dynamics. I know this because, how did I get to this profession? I went through a really bad contested divorce now 11 years ago, and didn't really know how to handle it, and came out of it wanting to do mediation better because I had felt quite bullied by the process. It was an evaluative process, or different styles of mediation. And long story short, I was talking to somebody about how I just would love to have people not suffer the way I did, because I'd met people ahead of me in divorce, and they would give me advice on how to get through it. And sadly, every story ended with, he's still a bastard, or the kids are still wrecked, or we can't go to a funeral or a wedding or a graduation without it all blowing up. And I thought, oh, is this what I have to look forward to? So I just in talking to some people discovered that you don't have to be an attorney to become a mediator. And someone suggested, well, just become a mediator and do it better. So I got a master's degree in alternative dispute resolution. And within just a few weeks of that program, I began to see, I felt like kind of a number on a case.
Right.
Yeah, it's, a number of attorneys were teaching these courses that were reformed litigators, if you will, or a child custody attorney. And told their stories, and within, during this process, it was a very cathartic experience, 22 term papers later, you write a lot of yourself, right? Anyway, it was cathartic. And I got to a place, I got into a course called the Neuroscience of Conflict, and I was blown away by how simple it is, how we are wired in such a simple way that we're able to cut through political, religious, generational, any kind of conflict that might be environmental, if you will, or cultural, cut through to things really quickly. And it was at that point, I was within 18 months of my own divorce decree, I was really over my divorce. And it wasn't because I sat around the table with my, now ex-spouse and said, let's work this out. Let's get along better for the kids. Because I came to terms with my children, even because I was doing things during the divorce that just tried to make their dad look bad, which was completely unfair to them. And it didn't serve anything, And so when I came to this realization, I looked back and realized, had I known then what I know now, we would not have gone through $270,000 in legal fees and $30,000 in therapy. And I was really contributing to my own misery and just didn't know it. And when that fork in the road, I decided, I could keep spinning in it, or I can go a different direction. And so I started showing up differently in the relationship with the father of my children. And actually, fairly soon after that, we started getting along well. And since then, for years now, we've gone on family vacations and we parent our children well. And our daughters have felt the relief of not having to worry about mom and dad getting together and all of that blowing up. So, and one last thing I'll add before we continue is what I had to learn as a mediator is that I was co-mediating sometimes, and other mediators would say to me on a break, let's say during a mediation, I think the dad's lying or the mother's treating the kids horribly. And I'd say we have to be very careful. We can't make that about how we feel. And
Mhm.
I came to where it's a skill I had to learn, but I figured out how to be present and engaged in even the most, blowing up conflict, even with the attorneys going at each other, and yet emotionally detached.
Mhm.
So I don't get wrapped up in it, because once we make the situation, especially as mediators, about how we feel, we've
Mhm.
lost objectivity. So I took that, all my mediator ethics about confidentiality and all my mediator ethics about biases and implicit biases, things like that, and I apply that to the conflict strategy work I do with most often individuals who want to resolve things. And I have an online program I can talk about later. But anyway, that may have been a bit of a long opening, but did
Yeah,
that
no,
help
no, no.
explain?
Yeah. Let's, if you would, apply now what you do specifically to the trust and estates realm, right? So,
Sure.
um, uh, and let me kind of throw out a couple of scenarios. Not that you have to use these, but I think anyone involved in this industry will be familiar with these. One is the uh, I'm going to use a case that I've got. You've got the longtime partner of the decedent
Mhm.
who they never got married. Here in California, we have something called registered domestic partners. They never became RDPs, right? And now the decedent has died, and the long term partner is basically out of luck. There's no will. So that person is not provided for. And they are, let's say at best, resentful, right? So that's
Mm.
one kind of conflict you get, right? And by the, as a someone who administrates trusts and probates, I can hear it. If I were to put myself in that person's position, I would feel like, I don't know, didn't my partner care enough about me to recognize me, or you know after all I did for this person, all those things, all that stuff comes up, right? Any unfinished
Right.
business comes up. So that's one. And here's another common one, right? It's so common now for people to get divorced and remarried, right? So you have children from the first marriage, get married again, you have children from the second marriage. Okay, second marriage, oftentimes you know more about how to raise kids, right? You like your kids better. They're younger, right? They're cuter, whatever, right? They haven't done their adult rebellion. And so in your estate plan, the tendency is to treat your new kids better, especially since you're still with that, the spouse of those children, right? And of course the original kids are, wait a minute, you're only like this because you messed up with us, right? So these are a couple of the common conflicts that happen in one in the administration process, another in the estate planning process. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that you see, and then maybe talk about how you approach them.
Sure. Well, the first situation you described, where the partner of the decedent is feeling resentful because they weren't provided for, and I don't know what the circumstances were, whether it's by law they couldn't be, or if it was a choice by the decedent and they didn't do something. I don't know
In my
the
particular case, I
circumstance.
don't know. The decedent died intestate. He maybe did that somewhat on purpose, right? There are people,
Right,
I hate
right,
to say it, but there are
right.
people who, they revel in dying without an estate plan and throwing all of their heirs into turmoil
Mm,
because maybe they did, they felt like all they wanted was money from them while they were alive. Or it could have been, the person just didn't get to it. They overlooked it. They never thought they were going to die as young as they did, right?
right, right, yeah. And the reason I inquire initially about, well, what was the administrative arrangement, or
Mhm.
whatever, because it in my role, it's the first thing is just to stay curious the whole time. I make no assumptions or make no judgments around anybody's choices or that they've made about their will, or anybody's choices about how they feel about being the one left.
Right.
That said, it's it is a relationship. It's a relational conflict, and even in the situation where someone has passed on and the person remaining is feeling resentful or has can't quite come to terms with the situation as it is, it's entirely possible. And I've had this happen a number of times where someone has passed and you can get clarity very quickly on why perhaps they did what they did, or come to terms from within yourself to be okay with it. And I had a situation, for example, it's a family business, and the father passed, and the daughter was made president, and the sibling was upset. His spouse was more upset than he was, and they cut off their children to the rest of the family. And this went on for like 10 years. And even though in the will things were provided for as equally as possible, somebody had to be made president of the company.
Right.
And so very just in working with this woman, she was able to get clarity very quickly around not only the situation with her sibling, and show up differently in conversations there that over the next several months helped to melt that situation and allow the families to come back together. But she had some issues or resentments, if you will, about her dad, who was no longer there, but was able to work through that just by getting to the heart of some of the deepest triggers that come up when we think about things that have happened with respect to people that we have relationships with, and being able to clear those quickly, and therefore get to a resolution that's
Mhm.
that I refer to real resolution a lot, not just a resolution like, okay, I'm not really over it, but okay, I'll just move on. People will say, just let it go. You can't let things go unless you really process it through. But it's so in that circumstance, it is possible just to be on your own and be able to get some clarity and get to some closure, if you will, around that situation. And it may also involve, um, this is why I think it's so important people have legal counsel, because some of the times they're feeling resentful just because they're not clear on some legal aspect.
Mhm.
And there is often, comes up that there's a need for acceptance, perhaps,
Mhm.
around there just isn't anything else that can be done, you know.
Yeah.
But to say, hey, look, there's nothing else you can do that can be done, just forget about it. That we don't respond that way to
Right.
that, or we don't respond well to that. So that was the first. Does that help answer the
Well,
first
yeah. So
situation?
let me kind of pull the thread on that a little bit, if I may.
Sure,
So,
sure.
when you say the person has to, or the issue needs to be, worked through, are you saying it needs to be worked through by the surviving partner, or are we talking about it needs to be worked through by, the people involved in the actual administration of the estate. So who is the party that needs to, or who are the parties that need to work it through? And then as kind of a corollary question, what if the parties that need to work it through, what if some of them are not open to working it through?
Right. Okay. No, excellent. The people I tend to work with are ones that want the help.
Okay.
One way or the other. They are, they would like to have a different result, and they would like to be finished with some situation and get some, again, closure and be able to move on with their lives.
Right.
That said, it's not always the person that's the party, if you will, in the estate situation. It sometimes is the administrator, it's the trustee, it's the lawyer. I've even worked with CPAs and financial advisors where they know they have a client that's very upset about something, and no matter what they say, they can't get their client to make significant legal and financial decisions that they're blocked, if you will, because they're so worked up about a certain situation. What do I do about that? If their client is wanting to get some help around clearing that conflict within themselves or around the situation, great. But if they're not, people don't like to be told you need to get help and work this out. So what I have done in the past, I work with that service provider, if you will, whether it's the trustee or the attorney or the CPA, and coach them on how to speak to this person so that they can approach it differently, and therefore helps this person see a different perspective without being told what to do. This is a very good point for I can share, or something I just thought to share. I'm on purpose not an advisor. People need advice, legal, financial, we need advice in life from subject matter experts. But the kind of approach I'm talking about is giving somebody an opportunity to work things through for themselves, not being told what they should be doing or should be feeling or should be letting go. So in these cases where I'm coaching or working with the trustee, let's say, or the estate attorney, helping them use literally communicating in a very specific way that resonates differently. We're all neurologically wired, and we get triggered by things, and the things that send our amygdala, like this, and fight, flight, freeze. There are ways to communicate that helps to lower that and reduce that reaction. The catch is we're not taught how to do this in school. We're not taught how to do this in MBA programs, no, in life, no. If you go study and you learn it, yay, great, but not everybody has the opportunity to do that. One of the reasons why I made a passionate commitment, to help other people resolve life's challenges a lot more easily, than what we think. So, so did that help answer the question?
Yeah. So, it's interesting, just to kind of wrap this one scenario up a little bit. There's a number of heirs to the estate, and of course they want their money, right? And they look at this individual as an impediment because he's living in the house that the decedent lived in. And the fact of the matter is, in order to sell the house, he can't be there, right? And so, in talking it over with kind of the lead heir, I said to her, I think that the first step to resolving this situation is acknowledging just the sort of basic human emotion that's going on for this individual, and acknowledging that he had an important place in the decedent's life, and doing that. And I said, from there, I think that if I'm nominated to be the administrator, I can't give him a financial interest to which he's not entitled. There are other ways that he can be involved in the wrapping up of the decedent's life. So one of the things I ran by on them was maybe he's put in charge of memorializing the decedent's Facebook page, and given, control over that, control over this person who is, very important in his life for, evidently decades. Okay, there's no, financial remuneration that comes with that, but there is a sense of satisfaction. And to the extent that he wants to work toward resolving this in his life, that could be an avenue for doing that, right? The response, of course, the heir's response was, no, just evict him. It's like,
Oh,
now,
yeah, I was going to say that's a great, that's actually, yeah, the fact to acknowledge someone and the need for acknowledgement, and also participation or contribution to the plans or
sort of the legacy of the
the
deceased.
legacy, the remembrance, etc. The challenge when they say no, this is, it's, I guess, and I mean, not, this is where I would, want to be a little more curious about the circumstances, but ideally, you hope that nobody ends up suing each other over something, right?
Right.
The one that's saying, no, not going to do it, tough. Perhaps that means it falls on you, to go to the other person and say,
right.
I'm just going to make this up as I go. Right? I'm going to just on the fly here. I can only appreciate how frustrating and perhaps hurtful and disappointed you may be feeling, because the family is not acknowledging you, or seems like they may not be acknowledging you for your role in this person's life and the significance you played in their life. And if it's something that's just recently happened, and I can only imagine you may still be in a state of shock, and you have a need to grieve, and this is, on top of needing to grieve, this discord with the family. I can only imagine the frustration and the pain this is causing you. And at that moment, whenever you do reach out to somebody like that, it's a great time to stop and just say, would that be right? And pause, because we never want to presume. And notice the words I was using are, I'm wondering if, maybe, possibly, it's not like, I bet you're feeling this because of this. Nobody knows exactly how we feel, right? So to be told, I know how you feel, no, you don't. And then, now we've got a problem, we've set up a problem. So being curious, and possibly this, maybe you're feeling this because of this. Is that right? Would that be fair? And let them have a moment to respond. And you're going to get one of three things usually. One, yeah, that's exactly what's going on, right? Or two, no, not at all. It's what it is, and now you have new information to work with, right? Or it's three, it's a mix. Well, yes and no, but at least you've given them, by communicating with somebody that way, it's an underlying way of showing respect. We all have these universal needs to belong, for respect, to be seen for who we are. In this situation, this person probably, I'm guessing, has a need to be seen for who they are as this long-term partner. And so allow them to respond. Then from there, you can continue. And by the way, always thank them for whatever they've said. Just thank you for letting me know that. I appreciate that. At the same time, I'm wondering if the family, whoever the people are in the family that are the pushing back, at the same time, it would seem the family is, for what it's worth, sticking to the legal bounds of the situation, which is their legal right to. whether or not they're doing it graciously, cannot be controlled, because we cannot control how other people respond to things. So at the same time, they are, going about it very administratively.
Mhm.
And I wonder, is there any clarity I can provide around any questions you may have around that, and shift it to the thing,
Mhm.
the legal situation, the administrative situation, and not and start to shift it from the people involved to the thing.
Right.
And if
Right.
in depending on what you get, and again, allow them to actually, though, there is one thing I'm really hung up on, or, no, I'm good. I just wish they would be less, obstinate or whatever.
Yeah.
But you being there, expressing communication that actually makes them feel heard and understood, or at least
Mhm.
appreciated in
Mhm.
some way, that that's gold. I mean, that's for them. That just that helps. It helps to um, ease their pain, and it allows them to it allows them to um, get that closure, or come to a place of acceptance
Yes.
more easily. Does that
So,
help?
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because I don't remember if I've mentioned this to you in one of our prior conversations. So prior to this iteration of my professional life, I was a chaplain in the Navy for
Yes.
16 years, all told. And what I find is the skills that I honed, as a chaplain, oftentimes come into play as a probate administrator, because the situations in which I get involved, it almost always there's some kind of conflict, and so if I want to both handle my duties efficiently, but also avoid, like you say, litigation, etc. So there's a whole emotional component to the work that I do that I have to
Mhm.
be very mindful of, if in the end I want to be successful. So and one of the things, and this, I can tell you that probably at least 50% of the counseling I did as a chaplain really came down to the person was grieving over something, and I had to coach them to let themselves grieve. Right. And this, I think this is one of the problems in our contemporary society, is this attitude of, nope, you got to move on. Well,
Right.
I don't think human beings, we're not geared to just moving on. There is a process of coming to terms with, gaining some understanding about, and then seeing that the future holds something of interest, of value to us, and that is the grieving process. And the grieving
Right.
process is necessary, I think, and not just when somebody in our life dies. It can happen when there's a loss of a career. It can happen when there's a relationship breaks up. So grieving is
Mhm.
a process of dealing with loss, not solely with death, right? And
Right.
the death of a person may not only trigger the loss of that person physically, but there could be other losses, the losses of a spouse who dies. Not only is the spouse gone, but the future of a
Oh,
life
yes.
together is gone as well. That's a separate loss from the
Mhm.
person themselves, right? There,
Mourning the loss of what was to be.
exactly, right.
And
Walking our
right.
children down the aisle when they got
Yeah.
married, or taking our grandchildren on vacations, whatever the things are that people have in their minds that they were looking forward to,
Mhm.
those are not going to be there anymore, right? And so
Right.
what
Right.
I find is, I know for in my life, I find that that's absolutely the case. And those are, in some ways, the loss of the expectations of the future are harder to deal with than the physical loss of a person.
Yeah, yeah, and often it happens a lot in divorce. There's no. I had one attorney once say, "There's no body to mourn in a
Right.
divorce; it's a
Yes,
relationship,
exactly.
right?"
Exactly. Although I
And
think a lot of divorced
yeah,
people would prefer that, but you don't get it.
yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah,
Sorry.
true, true.
So,
No, no, no. It's true. But that's the thing. To be able to move on quickly, regardless of what I mean, not to belittle a loss, but regardless of what the loss is, um, the quickest way to it is to address specific things that things that we remember let's say you're going about your life in your everyday life, and then something happens that triggers you and you're reminded of the person you've lost, or you're reminded of the person you're in conflict with, or the same thing. Here we go again. Too often, if we try to just generally, we talk about it, and we seek advice from friends and or advisors, even about how do I deal with this, how do I get past this. What it takes is actually getting down to a very specific incident, and it just takes one. It's like an emotional trigger, literally, like last Thursday when my brother texted me to say, he wasn't going to sign the agreement, to finalize the trust documents, whatever the situation is. That specific thing, we have to, what we do is process that, meaning, what does that make us feel? And why are we feeling that? More importantly, what's the emotional need attached to it? Is it progress? Is it financial security? Is it communication? Is it cooperation? What is it that is missing? What's the unmet need when that trigger happened? And when we apply it that way, we actually, it's like it's a relief to our system. It's like, I feel this way because I need this.
right.
And now the next step is to there's a quick process of connecting heart and brain, literally, such that we can access our higher intelligence. This is all neuroscience based, but we get an insight. It's like it's fine it's okay to figure out what's the need, but we don't stop there. What action do we take on this basis? What do I need to do? Maybe I need more information. Maybe I need to book another appointment with so and so. Maybe what is the action we need to take to get past this? And so it's processing those very specific triggers. And what's really great is you may have, I always start with people when I'm working with them. What's the one thing that could be resolved in your life? The one thing. And inevitably they go, oh, I know what that is. So someone always, oh God, it's usually something or someone, right? That they want, that could be done. But the thing, it's like, so when I ask that question, it's like, what's that one thing? And then follow up with, so give me an example of something that, when you think of that person, you're going along just great. Something comes up and, you go from feeling great to negative. And they're like, oh, I've got hundreds. Which example do you want? Right. Because then we're talking a lifelong situation, and the cool thing is it just takes one, because our neural pathways are just ingrained, right? With experience after experience after experience, trigger after trigger after trigger. And it just takes one to clear it. And it's like a domino effect. All these neural pathways start to get cleared. And you literally are rewriting a neural pathways in the moment, such that later on, when something else comes up that could have triggered you like it did before, it doesn't mean you've lost your memory about it. You remember the past, but you don't get triggered anymore. So you function from a different place. And that's how you can show up at weddings and funerals and graduations, with everybody there that you may have been, in deep conflict with before, and everything's fine. It's a very specific process.
So
I had a.
I'm sorry. Let me interject here, because and this is a question I've kind of had in the back of my mind basically since we started the show. So let's take a situation where um, not only is the conflict deep rooted, but it's unresolved, and it's based. I mean, it's not sort of a fictional conflict. So there was a profound, for example, what's the word I'm looking for? Betrayal at the heart
Mm.
of the conflict. Okay, um, for example, let's take a situation where a parent physically abused a child, right?
Mm.
And now the maybe it it's so bizarre how these happen, but that the parent may leave that child out of the estate plan out of their own sense of guilt, having known what they did to the child, and the child now having been, in essence, I think from their perspective, doubly betrayed, um, is enormously resentful. The parent is now gone. They're going to um, they're going to express that resentment to the other heirs, probably their siblings, right? Now, their siblings may have had nothing to do with it, although their siblings could also have facilitated it. That happens as well,
Mm.
right? But
Yeah.
there's a real problem there, right? And it's the person who caused the problem now is gone,
Mhm.
and yet this person is somehow supposed to get along with everybody, show up at family events, after having experienced this real double betrayal. So to my mind, there is such a moral injury there to the person.
Mm.
I would wonder that they could, um, assuming for the sake of the discussion, the person is a very moral person. They hold moral rectitude as a central pillar to their life. Um, they're essentially on a certain level being asked to violate their core values, or it would seem so, right? So, what does one do about a situation like that?
When you say, I mean, the person who was violated is being asked to violate their core values?
Right.
I
Yes. By sort of saying, "Oh well, my father is dead, so I've got. It's time for
so I
me to move
guess,
on." I mean, but the
I see, I
violation
see.
still
No, I
stands,
see.
and the fact that the father is, in essence, I'm just using a father. It could be a mother as well, but my father,
Right, right.
you know, in addition to abusing me now, has evidently disinherited me. Right? It's like,
Right. Yeah, the double, yeah, right,
you
the
know,
double, the double.
and knowing siblings as I do, they're going to be happy to share in the disinherited siblings share. Why would they not? It's more money for them.
Right, right.
Right? So,
Yeah, I'm just, actually, this reminds me of I had a client a few years back, uh, who had been abused by her dad, and a little different circumstance, that where um, she was approaching her mid 30s and was postponing starting a family
mhm,
because she was still in touch with her father and around her dad, and she didn't want to bring a child into the world and
mhm,
have that child be around him.
yeah,
And she had watched him abuse her mother and her siblings as well, and she was very resentful.
mhm,
And when she came to me, she was trying to, what she wanted to do is have a conversation with him and finally give him a piece of her mind, if you will. Yeah, like kind of
mhm.
just really open up and just say, all the things you've done to me.
Right.
And so she, to try to get over this, she had tried this to try to get over this so she could
Mhm,
feel free to start her family. And the shortcut to this is, what she came to discover is that, and this is through, honestly, just a couple of times working with her and processing through some things, as I described earlier, um, she felt like she had a need for justice,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a need for him to apologize,
Mm-hmm.
to atone for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, when she and what we did, I helped her, as I do my clients, construct a conversation. You do the processing, not just to help process to get through things, but it gives you literally vocabulary to work with to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was prepared. And when she came back, she said, he didn't want to go into it, but she started out by saying, I want to resolve this. I mean, I have some things I need to get clear with you. And are you open to that? And this, at first she's like, I don't want to ask him if he's open to that after what he's done to me. I said, go with the process, because if he says yes, great. If he says no, then you can say, okay, well then, and then give her the alternatives to that, without getting into too much detail, but for the sake of time. But she came out of it just having approached him, and he didn't want to talk about it. She discovered that it was a perceived need she had for justice, and there was an underlying need for just simple communication, just the fact that she had spoken this to him, that she wanted to have an apology from him, or just asking for that. It gave her a sense of satisfaction, and it surprised her. She got more closure out of that. It was like she had been living in fear of approaching him about this all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case where the father may be deceased, as I said earlier, you can process around things, and that person may be already in the next realm, but you can still get clarity around it. In the case where the siblings, or she's been cut out of the will, basically, that's tough. That's a hard one to deal with. And we talked earlier about mourning the loss of something. It doesn't always have to be a person. It's mourning the loss of the right.
Mm-hmm.
She may feel right to that part of the estate. And it's, I'll be honest, Kevin, in those situations, this is where, if there is an option for a legal challenge,
Mm-hmm.
to the will, I don't know, or to the estate, I don't know. If there is an option, where I can also be of help is to guide that person on how to talk to their attorney, to communicate with their attorney, so it doesn't become this expensive option, right? That how to focus the conversation, and how to communicate with the attorney and the siblings, and not pleading and convincing, I need to be part of this, but approaching them in a way that it gives it the best possible chance of getting what you feel, it is not owed you, but what you really genuinely feel is what you deserve. It's never 100% sure, but approaching conflict from a perspective of, what you're feeling and needing, and guessing what the other people are feeling and needing in the circumstances, and making it about the thing versus the people, is going to give you the best possible chance of real resolution. And at the end of the day, if you've tried your best, and you've turned over every rock and every stone, and gotten every advisor, legal or financial or otherwise, to help you, and it just hasn't, you've done all you can, that in itself, it may take a longer to mourn that process, but you've done that. And at the end of the day, however what we choose to do with that, is so important. It's when you have actually processed through as much as you can, that's when letting go is a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier.
Agreed. And I think, and again, I think this is another underappreciated aspect of conflict resolution is, there is not always justice in this world, right?
Right. Right.
And I know, again, from my own life, that having done my best to attain justice, even if in the end I don't receive it is a much more satisfactory result than, capitulation, right? And
Right, yeah,
right, but it's a skilled. It takes a very skilled practitioner
yes,
to help someone pursue justice in a way that doesn't, in essence, cause a great deal of self-destruction, even
right,
as it purportedly, uh, walks them on the route to acceptance of a situation, at least in the
right, yeah,
right. So that's
yeah,
the
and
challenge.
yeah, sorry, that acceptance, I mean, getting to that place of acceptance is key. And they may have had a need for freedom from the situation, relief. I've used the word closure as well, but there's also a need for power in our world. And sometimes after we've turned over every stone and we've done everything we can, um, we have that power within ourselves to free ourselves from from that situation
Mhm.
because we've done everything we can. That need for acceptance can be met, and that need for freedom and to move on. We can choose again to kind of stay stuck and spin in it, or realize that, I mean, sadly, unresolved conflict eats away at our health.
Mhm.
It ages us. Turning under the radar
Mhm.
ages us quickly. And so that's another piece that's a big piece I bring in when I'm working with my clients, because it's understanding, some people just want to hang on to be right in circumstances where you know, they've got a lot of wealth and they can pay to be right,
Mhm. Mhm.
pay the attorneys to fight to be right. But at the same time, do you understand what that's doing to your health
Right.
and your well-being and your immune system, so putting yourself first. I often tell people, yes, we put ourselves in other people's shoes to help resolve situations, but it's not all about touchy-feely, because people get sometimes like, I'm not going to do that. However, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, or working through something, and to even to let go of something for yourself, at the end of the day, is self-preservation.
Right.
you know
Mhm.
putting your own health first, or putting yourself first by putting yourself in other people's shoes and reaching out to them to see what's going on with them. They are, you're actually doing yourself a favor, you know
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
so
For sure. Well, you know what? We're coming up on not quite an hour,
yeah,
and we had said
yeah,
we would go for about 45 minutes. And
sure,
the I mean, this is a subject that we could go deeper and deeper and deeper, and uncover I think more and more um, good information, good thoughts for people to have. So, if you'll promise me that you'll come on the show again, I'll let you go this time. There's still a lot
I'd
to
be
be
happy
enjoyed.
to. Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's there's so many different directions to go to do a deep dive in. But I have to. I'm so glad that we had to meet, because we met through the uh, Independent Trustee Alliance.
Right. Uh-huh.
We were on a call together, and I wanted to just, if I may, a shout
Please.
out to the ITA,
Hmm.
because they bring professionals like us together. But and you may already know there's the annual conference coming up in Dallas, Texas, and
Hmm.
I just the dates are May 14 to 16.
Uh-huh.
And so any, fiduciaries, estate attorneys, trustees, whomever, whatever role you may have in the role of trusts and estates, it's a great organization to be a part of. And again, yeah, it brought us together. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and you know what? It hadn't occurred to me until you voiced it, that thank you for mentioning that the ITA's conference is coming up in May. Kevin Button I'm sorry, wrong Kevin. I have so many Kevins in my life. I'm going up on
Kevin
Kevin's.
Quinn.
Quinn, thank you. Kevin Quinn was on the show, I think maybe about 2 months ago, and he
Oh,
talked
great.
about the ITA and how it came into being and what it's all about. I've met a number of great people through the organization. I'm hoping I can attend the conference. There's as I told Kevin and Marguerite, there are some things going on in my life that may require my being here in California.
No worries. Yeah.
Well,
and hopefully, yeah, you could and understand if you can't. I'll be speaking on the topic of the transformative trustee. How it only takes one person to resolve family dynamics and preserve wealth.
Well, that's a great topic. If I can't get to the conference, I think all the sessions are recorded. So
I think they do. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
hopefully I'll be able to, if nothing else, see the recording of it. But again, this is, I think people in our industry tend to think of conflict resolution as being sort of an ancillary part of what we do, and I would argue it is a core part of what we do. Fortunate is the fiduciary, the trustee, the lawyer, the accountant who has a practice free from conflict between beneficiaries, heirs, etc. I have not had one case where that was the situation. Where people, when people are involved, conflict is either happening or brewing. And
it's inevitable. Yeah, when humans get together, there's going to be conflict.
Exactly. So I think this should be a perennial topic for anyone who is involved in this profession, and maybe more specifically anyone who really wants to be successful. And I use the word success. I don't mean just financially successful. I mean successful in the broadest meaning of that term. Whatever happens in the estate planning and administration process, that is really just a way stop in people's lives. And in most cases, those lives are going to go on for decades afterwards. And so we as professionals can either we can either help those future decades be better, or we can help them, potentially be worse. So
maybe to close out, that's that point I made earlier about you can get to settlement in a mediation situation where you're kind of forced to work things out, but nobody wants to be forced to work something out, right? Instead, it's, the alternative is real resolution, where you can really work it through, and it doesn't have to take years to get that to happen. One of the things I did from the pandemic, I took a lot of the one-on-one and workshop work I had done with organizations and turned it into an online program. It's called Resolving Family and Business Conflict, and I've had trustees and lawyers and also business owners who've come to me with their issues to go through the program. And it actually has helped them tremendously, not just only in how to serve their clients more effectively when it comes to conflict, but it can be quite transformative for themselves as well, because when we up-level our conflict resolution skills, we up-level our communication skills. And our problem resolving skills and our creative skills. And that, that has this knock-on effect. Life is not going to stop throwing us challenges. My big mission and my big, mediator mantra or mission in life is to help people, to deal with those challenges more easily. Happiness is not getting to a place where everything's okay, because that's never the case. Happiness, there's always something or somebody, right? No, happiness is knowing that whatever life throws you, you can handle it, and it's an up-leveling of those skills so that you can be more resilient and live a longer and healthier life as a result.
Absolutely.
So, there you go.
Absolutely. So for those of you who would like to get in touch with Dana, I'll put your contact information. I was going to say conflict information, contact information in the show notes. So that'll all be there. And we'll also, if you want to give me a link to your training program, I can put that in the show notes as well, so that people who would like to check that out, they'll be able to, because I think that may be a good way for people to start. What you identified as the leveling up of our skills. That's something I think we can
Right.
all
Yeah.
use. Yeah. Well,
No,
so
that's great. And yeah, I was just going to say, I pretty much work from virtually anywhere. It's why I'm in London, actually, because I'm visiting my daughter. I've been missing her a lot. So I spent a couple of months here, just to be around her, if you will. But
yeah,
I
I
was
get it.
delighted that, yeah, right. But I was delighted this could work out. Our live from London and Beverly Hills,
There
and
you go. Exactly. Right.
it's been fun.
Absolutely. So, Dana, first of all, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to have you hang tight. I'm going to do a little wrap up here, and then we can talk offline for a minute, if you don't mind. So folks, again, you will not find anyone better than Dana at helping you to resolve impossible conflict. That her entire life is dedicated to that. And I think today's show showed you the level of skill that Dana has, and that's to the good, because as she mentioned a number of times, this is just part of learning to deal with life. If you want happiness and satisfaction in life, it's a skill that we all have to develop. So I shameless plug, as you know, because my guests will never say this about themselves, but I certainly will. you know,
Thank you.
check
Very
out
gracious.
Anna,
Thank you.
and she will help you get through whatever it is that you're going through. So I thank you very much for joining us today. I'm not going to even ask you if you got anything good out of the show. You had to have, or you were asleep when you were watching the show. And especially to our live viewers, I see there's a number of you there. Always great to know that you're out there checking out the show. I appreciate deeply your joining us, and I just tell your friends about the show, if you would, and not so much for my benefit, but for their benefit. A show like this, where we're really talking about a core skill, not just for trust and estates, but for life, could really help them out. So would appreciate you sort of passing this along. Real quickly, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And my topic is, what is my topic? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about the business lessons you can learn from privateers. Okay, so those of you who know anything about seagoing times, privateers were sort of like official pirates hired by countries. And there are, I think, some quite fascinating business lessons we can use based on how they operated. And then on Wednesday at 10 a.m., is our monthly economic echoes. I know that was supposed to be last week. I got stuck in court all day and I wasn't able to broadcast, so I had to reschedule it for Wednesday of this week at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time is my show, Jiggers's Place, where we sit back and have a cocktail and talk about all the non-business aspects of life. And this Thursday, I'm going to be talking about the pleasures in life, and I'm going to introduce you to the resource I use to think about that and decide what are some of my pleasures. For those of you who know a book called A Year in Provence, written by Peter Mayle. So Peter Mayle wrote another book called Acquired Tastes, and it's a marvelous book. And so we're actually going to sit back and have one of Peter Mayle's favorite libations, and talk about his thoughts on all the things that make life worth living. So 5 p.m. Thursday at Jiggers's Place. Please join me. And then a week from today, we'll be back for the next edition of Trusts and Estates Weekly. So, Dana, one last time, thank you so much for joining me, especially all the way from England, London. I'm super jealous. So, badly want to go there, haven't been yet. So, and signing off as I always do, Marie, darling, you are my belle. You know you are.